Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us for the December 15th meeting of the Fortuna City Council. If you'll silence your electronic devices and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Conley?
Present.
Councilmember Diaz?
Here.
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent? Here. Mayor Johnson?
Here, and thank you. And the first order of business this evening is oral comments from the public. Is there anybody in the audience that has anything to comment on that is not on the agenda?
I'd like to comment on I believe it.
You are a test victim for the evening.
Yeah. All right. Chief Eberhardt, I'd like to comment on the Al Gray Lighted Parade this last Friday. Want to say thank you to everybody in the community that came out. Was the most engagement that I've seen from the community in a lot of years. Driving the route, there was along the entire route was community members and people out enjoying it. Also, thank you to all the city staff, the police department, streets department, parks, everybody that worked together to pull this event off. And it was nice working with the Chamber of Commerce at the new route, new location at the park. Everything worked out very well, and there was a lot of positive comments. And I just wanted to let the council know that that was a very successful event, and I think the organization from the chamber and the communication really helped. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work you guys did, both you and Public Works, in the traffic control and seeing everything safely. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and our next item is the consent calendar, which has 12 items. The minutes and on down through each of the departments, as well as approve an environmental friendly purchasing procurement policy, approval of personnel file and comprehensive record retention policy, authorization for destruction of selected finance files, and approve amended part-time classification and pay rate. Is there anything anybody would like to pull? Is there any public comment on the consent calendar items? Well, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. And we come to our first item of business, which is the second reading and adoption of ordinance 2025-779, amending Municipal Code Title 17 zoning regulations. We have staff report.
Honorable Mayor and council members, on December 1st, your City Council introduced ordinances 2025-779 and 2025-780, which amended the Fortuna Municipal Code to implement programs that were contained in the sixth cycle of the housing element. And as required by the state of California, you received that presentation again on December 1st, and staff are in the audience should you have any questions.
Is there any questions for staff regarding this?
I've got just a quick comment that I think I shared with Amy earlier, but I just, I kind of mentioned it at the last meeting. The the need for a conditional use permit for multifamily and some of these designated parcels. Seems like, if in the future we're looking to streamline some of the, the burdens to development, that, might make sense to look at those to make them principally permitted rather than conditionally. Again, just making it easier to get more of those units built in the city, but I don't want to hold up the process, at this point, just comment for the future consideration.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Well, if we have no other questions for staff, we'll entertain a motion.
I'm just making sure he doesn't need to open and close the public hearing on it before I do.
Yes, you need to open the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Well, instead of opening public comment, we'll open public hearing. Is there any people would like to make a comment or bring anything to the council's attention? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion to hold second reading and adopt ordinance 2025-779 and read by title only.
Second. Ordinance 2025-779, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna to amend Fortuna Municipal Code Title 17 zoning regulations, Chapter 17.03, 17.06, and 17.08 to implement the sixth cycle housing element and find the amendments to be exempt from additional California Environmental Quality Act review pursuant to Public Resources Code and CEQA guidelines. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
And you don't need to open and close the second one? Okay.
No.
Make a motion to hold the second reading and adopt ordinance 2025-780 and read by title only.
Second.
Ordinance 2025-780, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna to amend Fortuna Municipal Code Title 17, Section 17.02.030 zoning map to adopt the qualified combining zone to implement the sixth cycle housing element and mill district-specific plan and find the amendments to be exempt from additional California Environmental Quality Act review pursuant to Public Resources Code and CEQA guidelines.
Aye.
Councilmember Conley, Councilmember Diaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem
Yes.
Trent. Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you. And now we come to discussion of design alternatives and project aesthetics for roundabouts and the retaining wall.
Mayor might have suggested the city manager.
Can't hear you.
Oh. Okay. Okay, I'm ready now. Honorable Mayor and council members, the City of Fortuna initiated a listening campaign with the assistance of consultant Jen Rice during the summer and fall of 2025 to inform the public engagement process for the updates to the city's general and strategic plans. This approach involved interviewing staff and community members and was designed to be more proactive and collaborative than other traditional government comment processes. City staff and community members, including a design team of 8 residents and staff, even a few more resident volunteers as we moved through the process, conducted interviews using open-ended questions and focus groups to discover what city staff and community members anonymously think, feel, hope for, and prioritize about the city's future operations and development. City staff interviews were conducted across all departments, and staff were asked about their experiences and internal strategic interests. And community interviews were conducted of residents, and they were asked how they feel about and what they hope for in their community. And we also conducted focus groups with immigrants and struggling teens, two groups that often lack influence, yet are greatly impacted on decisions that are made at the local level. And before I really get into this, I really want to personally thank the City Council for stepping into this process and authorizing it. And I hope that you see the value in the feedback that we received from staff as well as how it translates into the strategic and general plan updates. We asked 19 staff, or 23% of full-time staff across all departments, a series of questions. What we heard was both challenging and inspiring. Today I'm going to share with you what we learned and what this means for our path forward as an organization. This wasn't a survey. These were real conversations where staff could be very candid. The process itself helped build trust, and staff in the community loved having an opportunity to share their perspectives. Community interviews and teen and immigrant focus groups were only recently completed, so the community interview report or update will come back at a later date. And I also just want to say that this process also ignited a volunteer group to help inform an economic piece of the strategic plan. And so that's really exciting. So that's currently taking place where we have a group of volunteers reaching out to businesses to get their feedback on what it is that they need in the future of economic development in this city. What we learned is staff are dedicated to the city's mission of service and quality. They are providing what makes civilization possible. They are driven by internal culture, and they demonstrate a fierce loyalty, saying things like, "We are like extended family." And teamwork and a high adaptive capacity, they all step up and meet the challenge, and I can speak to that personally. I watch staff on a daily basis adapt quickly and take on new tasks all the time, specifically when it comes to state mandates. We are constantly forced into that situation, and staff always step up to the plate. Staff are Fortuna's greatest asset. They are working a massive amount of overtime, as you have heard very recently, and they do this out of loyalty, and they improvise solutions, and they're holding the line. And so this is some of the good stuff that we're building on. There is also a tension in what we learned about staff strengths. Staff identified that what is currently working is the 34-hour work week is a morale boost. There is strong teamwork within departments. Staff scored our clear vision as 4.9 out of 10. But when we asked about the strategic planning process, they scored it between 8 to 10 out of 10. And so that's a significant point jump in their confidence just by being asked the question. Staff were very optimistic about this planning process. They see it as a turning point. But we also heard 3 systemic challenges that need attention. Retention is fragile. Staff stay out of loyalty, not compensation. That's not sustainable long term. Fortuna employment is viewed as a stepping stone to a higher paying job, and we've seen that with our 25, almost, actually I think it hit 30% turnover. And we're going to be working on that. We're also losing institutional knowledge, and this ties into that a vision hasn't been documented and translated into action. And that's why we're doing some of the things that we're doing. And when asked, city staff rated our clarity of purpose as a 4.9 out of 10. So that's not a great score there. And the last tension, or what's at risk, is we are approving projects without maintenance plans, and this often sets staff up to fail. At the same time we were engaging in this listening campaign to inform the strategic and general plan updates, we were also working on an annual survey metric to help hold leadership staff accountable to the organization and its employees. The City of Fortuna conducted an anonymous survey in the fall with 52 complete responses. The survey aimed to assess employee engagement, satisfaction, and organizational culture. Engagement and culture, it came out very strong. Employees feel connected to the mission, experience high peer respect, and exhibit strong problem solving and resilience. These is hallmarks of a healthy service culture, as you would anticipate in public service. This social capital is a major organizational strength to protect and reinforce, and this is also very consistent with the staff listening campaign. And then you will also not be surprised that compensation is a pressure point or a pain point that was identified in the anonymous employee survey. And so again, the employee survey will be an annual tool that we use as a metric to track our progress. So what we heard and learned from all of this is what staff need, and these items all translate particularly well into a strategic plan. They need clear decision-making tools. This helps staff thoroughly understand a problem or situation or potential opportunity by asking open-ended questions to better understand the situation or opportunity, and it helps to create an atmosphere where innovative solutions can be adapted and tested and tried out. Also, long-term cost accountability is something that staff are looking for. Staff noted that new projects, especially park acquisitions, often lack long-term maintenance plans or dedicated staff. This creates an unfunded mandate on overwhelmed crews already. So exploring mandating that all capital projects require fully burdened cost calculations for maintenance and staffing, and that buy-in is secured from those maintaining departments like Parks and Recreation and Public Works before final approval. So what also came up is that the streamlined development approval process is jumbled and often feels too burdensome. So the current development approval process is viewed as a major impediment to economic growth. We will want to explore developing a clear, objective, and concise development framework to make Fortuna more competitive while addressing the regulatory burden that makes economic development challenging. And staff are already actually working on this particular project, as it's something that staff are invested in seeing improved. Staff also need autonomy and support. This is giving staff the appropriate training to do their jobs and providing guidance such as vision and a sense of purpose, so staff can have confidence that they're moving in the right direction and trusting in their experience so they can do their jobs. And I just want to also emphasize, these are not complaints. These are the asks or the conditions that let staff do their best work, and so this is giving staff the tools they need to succeed. So the path forward, staff have participated in a workshop where we started working on a shared purpose, values, decision-making criteria, even long-term cost accountability and improvement to the development review process. And these items would be included in a draft strategic plan. There will also be a future budget request to your city council, estimated at somewhere between $55,000 and $70,000 to continue phase 2 of this work. And phase 2 of this work will be a community listening campaign report. And then obviously once you have all of this information, you need to hold community workshops to gather input on these pieces of information that will then be moved into the strategic and general plan priorities. And then also in 2026, we'll have a draft strategic plan reflecting both staff operation needs and community vision. And then hopefully we'll also be releasing the general plan RFP, and then we can use all of this wonderful feedback to help inform the general plan. So we are at a pivot point right now, and staff understand that, and they know it, and they're ready to adapt. And they've really communicated very clearly to us what they need to succeed. They're already doing a lot of heroic work, as documented by their significant hours of overtime and all of their wonderful accomplishments. And so how can council help now? We can start by clarifying the city's values, purpose, and decision-making, and so letting this process continue on. And so when a community and a city has a shared purpose, which is why does the city of Fortuna exist, it reduces conflict over different expectations and increases staff's confidence. about how to adapt to changing realities while staying on course. And I just want to give an example of why this is important. When I was speaking on the failed sales tax measure, Measure P, I was speaking to a Rotary group, and I was talking about the mill site, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we had our own, very own target? And one of those audience members said, no, that wouldn't be great. We don't want that here. And I responded with, we want that sales tax. The city needs that sales tax. And so there definitely is a push-pull between growth, no growth. And so when you go through these processes where the community participates, it really does help create a sense of shared expectation. So that's why this is important. And again, just want to say thank you for authorizing this process, and I am happy to answer any questions. And I also just want to say, too, that staff love this city. They really are doing an incredible amount of work on a daily basis, and they have incredible productivity, and they're ready to step up to the challenge, especially these existing long-term staff. They're just fiercely loyal and dedicated, and we're super appreciative that we have them here. And I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Okay. Is there any questions for the comments? Well, I'm interested to, if you need help, to participate in the public workshops and hear what the public has to say regarding where Fortuna's at, where we could go, and so I'm looking forward to that. And while we're speaking of that, is there any public comment from anyone here regarding what we just heard?
Chief Eberhard again. First and foremost, I'd like to echo the thank you to council for engaging and allowing us to engage in this process. This was a lot of work, to be direct. Participated over the years in department head, division head meetings where we've done some strategic planning, and we've tried to come up with, what do we need to do in the future here. This was an entirely different process. We felt heard as employees, not just department and division heads, but employees across the city that got interviewed felt heard. And this is helping to address the us versus them that does exist in this world. That also exists out there in the community with our city government and our city employees, the people out there. This is extremely valuable. I think that continuing to engage in this process is going to yield great benefits, and allowing people in the community to feel heard, be a part of city government, and the benefits extend well beyond just what we're doing here. As an employee here, I got to interview and talk to other employees, and it gave me a really good perspective of who they are, how dedicated they are, the great ideas they have, and I just think it's extremely important to continue with this process. And thank you again.
Thank you. Any other public comments here? Seeing none, thank you for the report on that. Is there anything else you need from us at this time? I know you're going to need something a little later.
I will be back with a supplemental budget request, but you could just make a motion to accept the report. Because there are a number of documents that are contained as attachments.
What would be in phase 2?
Oh, well, in phase 2 is the community report. So today you just heard about the staff listening campaign. And so phase 2 is the community listening campaign report. So as Chief Eberhard mentioned, we've actually been interviewing residents and asking about their priorities and hopes for their community. And so we will give you that information and those themes that come out. And then I also mentioned that we had an immigrant focus group and a struggling teens focus group. So we'll have a plethora of information that'll come out in that listening campaign report. And then also in phase 2, once you have all of that information, you then have to go out to the community and gather their input, because it's really helpful when the community sees that they've been heard. So we'll map all of this stuff and we'll have these beautiful workshops, and that will be part of phase 2. And then also we will have a draft of the strategic plan after the workshops. And then also that information will then be incorporated into the general plan.
How do you choose who in the community you're going to talk to?
So we did, when we had a design team meeting, which Mayor Johnson was a part of. I believe you were there that day, Mayor Johnson. And we just started randomly throwing out names and categories too. We would, so we wanted a developer, we wanted a business owner, we wanted somebody maybe who was struggling to maintain housing. And so we just tried to brainstorm as many people as we possibly could. And so we've been out interviewing since August. And then also when we interview, we've been asking, who else should we interview? You're
Is the
welcome.
strategic plan a formal, like, document, like a general plan, or is this just kind of an informal, that we don't have to, meet any sort of specific requirements or regulations with it?
Well,
Or-
in your city council policies and procedures, you actually have a formal, you call it goal setting, but that's really not accurate. You need to have a strategic plan that then delineates all of those goals. And one of the ways that you get to a strategic plan is you engage your staff and you engage your community, so you're making sure that those strategic planning priorities are what the community and the staff want. And so it's a document that helps guide the organization.
Okay. Any other, we can have a motion to receive the report.
I make a motion to accept the update on the Fortuna listening campaign.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept and file the report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. And round 2 on the aesthetics and design team.
The computer did successfully update now 3 times. But we're going to do this old school. I'll indicate when the slides need to move forward, so. We're going to talk about aesthetics of roundabouts, retaining walls, other public infrastructure projects. As you know, we have 5 roundabouts that are sort of in various stages of planning. That's the wrong presentation, it's the other one. So we've got 2 at Kenmar, which is nearing 100% design at this point. We have 2 at the 12th Street intersection with US Highway 101 at various stages of planning and design. We're going to submit a grant here pretty quick for design and construction for that complete intersection. We also have 1 planned at Kenmar Ross Hill intersection. So these roundabouts all have some similar elements in terms of a central feature that has some degree of aesthetics or landscaping or hardscaping associated with it. Sometimes there's signage associated. There's also several retaining walls with the Kenmar roundabout, quite expansive retaining walls. And the reason we're kind of bringing this to you now, some of those projects are quite a ways down the road, but the Kenmar project is going to Caltrans for full design approval. And if there are going to be things like large art installations or landscaping and irrigation, things like that, they want to know, because those interchanges are in there right away. So they want to have approval authority over what the city would install there. And that will play into some sort of a maintenance agreement, because anything other than hardscaping, Caltrans has communicated that will be on the city to maintain. So they're not going to mow lawns, they're not going to trim bushes or flowers or anything like that, or maintain entry signage, things like that. So anything other than flat pavement and hardscape will be on the city to Parks and Public Works to maintain. So go ahead and switch to the next one there. Okay, so that's kind of the relative locations of the roundabouts. On the north end there, you see the 12th Street intersection. Kenmar would be at the far south, and then the Ross Hill Road Boulevard intersection is just to the east of that. So we're going to look for some clarity on design objectives and what level of landscaping the council might want to see. It might be uniform across these roundabouts. It might vary based on where they're at. Discuss some of those level of service expectations, and the city manager's presentation was actually a great lead-in, because we'll talk about what the costs of various levels of landscaping maintenance are, and then hopefully kind of come out of this with a selected preferred level of service for some of these elements. So what level of landscaping and other surface treatments does the council want to see? You know, stamped concrete, form liners, et cetera. And are there certain intersections that are considered gateways that the city council might want to see something that has a higher level of maintenance, a higher level of aesthetic treatment that really acts as a gateway into the city? These are the main off-ramps into the city, so that's something we might want to consider. So this is just a picture showing the location of the roundabouts, just kind of how they're roughly laid out, and we'll get into kind of the anatomy of a roundabout here in a second. Next slide. So this would be some of the existing conditions at Kenmar. On the inset photo there, you can see those pillars. There will be a pedestrian bicycle class 1 underpass trail through there. So as you can see, as that bank gets carved back, there's going to be a pretty substantial retaining wall all the way underneath the highway there. That retaining wall could be anything from bare concrete to super fancy concrete to a giant mural to, you know, whatever you might dream up. Next slide. So in terms of just kind of the anatomy of the roundabout, you do have the central island, and that can be hardscaped, can be landscaped in various ways. We'll look at all of that. They have what are called splitter islands, so those are the lane splitters. And then you have kind of these little periphery areas. I think of them as just kind of landscape buffer strips. The landscape architects will always show them vegetated, and then when you start to kind of work out what they are, they're this wide, you know, or maybe this wide. And so thinking about whether it makes sense to keep sidewalks curb tight or try to fit in these little kind of sliver planters is a good place to start. Next. So these are the current landscape concepts for the 12th Street roundabout. As you can see, you know, from the landscaping plan there, there's pretty detailed amounts of landscaping. There's cobblestone rock. There's stamped and stained concrete elements. There's large trees in the center of the roundabout. From a sight distance standpoint, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but trees come with their own sort of infrastructure considerations. And these are all just, you know, design level, planning level documents. These are not detailed landscaping construction plans or anything like that yet. But it gives you an idea of, like, as you start to lay things out like this, they start to get a little inertia and weight to them. Next, please. This is another landscape concept that was put together. So you can kind of see the level of, you know, thinking that people start to go to. And you start to think about thematic elements. Does Fortuna have certain thematic elements that the city would want to see carried through so there's some degree of uniformity? If you had fish sculptures, do you want fish sculptures in all of the roundabouts? Do you want fish of varying species or size? Or, you know, you start to think about, if you have trees, do you have similar trees of species and size? So this is but you can start to see very conceptually, like those little sliver planters. You know, a little sliver planter requires a whole bunch of maintenance because you still have to get in there and deal with it like you do any other piece of landscaping. Next slide. And go ahead and just click through. So you can, for hardscaping, you're really looking at anything from just plain old concrete, next, to you know, exposed aggregate, colors, stamped and stained, all the way up to brickwork, pavers, embedded cobbles, and that's kind of like the hierarchy from low maintenance to high maintenance. If you think about if it breaks and you needed to fix it, it's much more expensive to match that cobble or, detailed brickwork than it would be to just match concrete. In terms of landscaping, low maintenance is there's no landscaping, to a higher sort of level of maintenance, to, increasing art, signage, things that if they get run over are going to take, custom artwork to replace. Click next one. So this slide kind of gives you a flavor of like low to no maintenance. This is what Caltrans would prefer. This is what they will maintain if we were to install it in there right away. It's basically concrete. You can get about as fancy as you want. You can dye it a color and you can stamp it a pattern, but it's concrete. Next slide. This would be just kind of a step above that. So the upper left-hand side is actually a local roundabout. The one on the lower right is also a local roundabout. That's the one out at the Elk Valley gas station in Crescent City. So you can kind of see what, they don't want just bare concrete, so you start to put some landscaping there. But if it doesn't really get maintained, what does it really become? Is it better than concrete aesthetically? Putting cobblestone in something, putting down weed mat and cobblestone does work, but it's not maintenance free. You generally then are pretty much obligated to go in there and spray it to remove weeds. Next slide. Then this would be kind of the next higher level of maintenance. You start to get into things like wayfinding signage, custom entry signage, more sort of heavily landscaped areas. The top left and the bottom left are actually the same roundabout in Blue Lake. And at first I thought that they had removed the trees because they were 24 and 25 photographs on Google Maps. They actually just planted those trees. So not sure why, but somebody decided to plant multiple redwood trees in the center of that roundabout. Those trees will absolutely crack all that concrete. So we want to avoid situations like that. If you're going to put in a tree, no concrete in the drip line. Like if you put in a tree, get the right tree for the right spot and give it enough room to do what trees do. You can kind of see there, varying levels of maintenance. The one on the lower right is the one out in Old Arcata Road out at Indianola. So there was sort of varying landscaping there, but it's not necessarily maintained. So there's blackberries and stuff growing out of it. So next slide. And then this would be kind of this is your signature gateway into the city. You're going to really put the time and attention and have crews out there. You're going to irrigate it. You're going to have Christmas lighting. You're going to have, custom signage. You start to have these vertical separations. I kind of like the one in the lower center there where you have, embossed concrete that has some sort of vertical separation. Detailed landscaping, everything is stamped or stained or both. That's kind of your highest level of maintenance from a landscaping perspective. And then you can even see in the center one there, they landscaped all their splitter islands and stuff. You're going to have somebody out there in that splitter island in traffic dealing with all of that. Next slide. So this isn't necessarily another higher level, but it's kind of an additional level there, would be custom art, right? So the underlying surface is pretty cheap because it's not detailed in any way, but then you have, art on the top of it. And I'm sure all of these pictures were taken on the day that they were painted. But they're very cool. They're great concepts. They look great. You can sort of start to see how you could implement some themes if Fortuna had certain, whether it's rodeo or fishing or rivers or whatever it is, how you could start to implement some of that, from the downtown area out to the roundabouts and start tying things together. I also think this is, a good opportunity if you have community groups that are interested in doing art projects. It can be a real community building kind of endeavor, but they do require maintenance. Somebody has to repaint it or paint over it. So there's something to consider. Next slide. So with regard to retaining walls, the ChemArt project does have 3 fairly significant retaining walls. So the one retaining wall, one there on the north side, we talked about that. That's the one going underneath the freeway. There's one as you come out under the freeway on the Riverwalk side, and then there's one behind the park and ride on the opposite side of the road. Really, from an aesthetic standpoint, in my mind, we're really talking about retaining wall 1. That's the one that's going to have the bike path running right next to it. It's probably going to have lights. It's going to, it's going to be visually prominent as you go under the freeway. Retaining wall 2, not quite as much, and retaining wall 3 is really kind of back off behind the park and ride. It's quite a ways away. Doesn't mean it won't be seen, but it's more kind of off the beaten path a little bit. Next slide. So this gives you another sort of look at how the retaining wall's set up there. And next slide. And this slide and the next one will give you a little bit of perspective about how tall we're talking. So these are going to be 10 to 12 feet tall underneath the freeway when they start cutting that bank back. So they're a significant expanse of concrete. Next slide. And then these are the other 2 retaining walls, with retaining wall 3 being the one on the far side of the park and ride. So they're all at least, standard human head height. I assume that's a standard human there with a very strange hairdo. Next slide. So then in terms of retaining wall aesthetics, you can get into all kinds of, interesting textures, colors, form liners. So you can get custom form liners that are made that say City of Fortuna and have a saw blade and a horse and a train, or, whatever you could dream up, you can do with custom form liners, and you can kind of see various aspects of that. The one on the far bottom right would be just kind of a simple block looking, cracked natural stone feature. One thing to think about with these is retaining walls are a magnet for graffiti. I don't see that graffiti is a huge problem in Fortuna, not the way it is in some of the other cities around here. But it does happen, and people do have to clean it off, and smooth surfaces clean up a lot quicker and easier. They're easier to paint over than something that's very highly detailed, like, say, the upper right-hand side there. That would be very difficult to remove the graffiti from. You can also get into applied and mounted artwork, tile mosaics, metal flat work, mixed media. The art installation and kind of the bottom right, the one up from the bottom right, actually has some 3D elements. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. Next slide. So in terms of thematic elements, these are just ones that the landscape architects kind of pulled out as being prominent in Fortuna. So, natural, indigenous, city-related, railroad, timber, fishing, farming, and you can kind of see some elements of that, in some of our existing buildings. Looking at the city's value and visions, like, how do you incorporate the idea of the friendly city? Do you have a certain font that you want that set in? Looking at everything from rivers and creeks to fish and wildlife. You really kind of, the sky's the limit there. So next. So you don't have to start from scratch. You have some of these signs, you have some of these elements already in things that are around the city. This is the Welcome to Fortuna sign down there at Kemar Ross Hill. You can see it's got river elements, it's got wood, it's got cobblestone, it's got fish and rodeo, depending on the time of year. That's an interchangeable feature that's kind of cool. So having something that is pretty low maintenance, but you can go out and change it out seasonally or based on some event, that's a good idea. That sign will be removed as part of that project, so we'd have to figure out where that's going to go, and it makes sense to be in the center of the roundabout. Kemar Ross Hill, again, is like down the road a ways, but if we do something at the Kemar interchange or at the 12th Street interchange, do you want some sort of cohesion between how they look, or do you want them to look different? Are they different in specific ways for specific reasons? So in the bottom right there, you can see kind of the entryway to Main Street on 12th there. Has the log, has kind of massive timbers. So there's kind of an aesthetic that's already going, and we can keep going that direction. Next slide. So this was the Gateway project at the north end of town on Main Street, and these were the initial landscape architects' kind of renderings. And as you can see, there was a lot of landscaping planned there. These were, giant fish sculptures. These were things that were kind of thrown out and discussed. And the next slide is what was installed. And so on the upper right, you see what it was before, and the main picture there is what it is now. And again, you've got the rodeo element, so that again is a detachable element. There's a lot of bark there. As you can see, the weeds are starting to grow up in the bark. It's a little hard to see in that photo. But bark, weed mat and bark is not a no maintenance. It's low maintenance, but it's not no maintenance. You do have to refresh the bark. You do have to deal with the weeds. And so thinking about in areas, certain areas, like, are you gaining anything by doing bark versus doing concrete, stamped and stained? Next slide. But you've got a common element there with the cobblestones. You've got the rodeo. You've got the friendly city. Next slide. Uh-oh. There we go. So then talking about levels of service, and I like to think about levels of service in everything. I mean, road maintenance has a level of service. Park maintenance has a level of service. And it's really, what does the city expect in terms of the level of service that we're going to provide our residents? Is the park going to be absolutely golf course green? That's the only acceptable, mown twice a week in the summer, irrigated, fertilized, herbicide, whatever, maintenance regime you have for that, or is it going to be something less than that? So design choices come with long-term commitments. So ongoing maintenance burdens increase as you start to add landscaping, you start to add irrigation, you start to add specialty items, artwork. So looking for ways that you can get the aesthetic effect that you want while reducing mowing and weeding, eliminating cracking and lifting due to tree roots, right tree, right place, make graffiti removal and overpainting easier, reducing the number, type, cost of specialty art features, and making sure that they're repairable, replaceable, is a good thing to think about. Next slide. So features to avoid, and some of this is personal opinion, and I'm just throwing it out there, but trees with flat work in the drip line is never generally a good idea. Unless you have a plan to cut down those trees every 5 to 7 years and replant them with trees of similar size, it's not a great plan. So it pretty much precludes trees from the roundabout unless you're going to put them in the center and you're going to give them a good area to do their thing. Unnecessary landscaped areas that just grow weeds, sliver planters, like some of those interstitial areas and the areas along the edges, don't really gain you a whole lot aesthetically. So features to include with caution would be things like sculptures, paintings, art, make them durable, repairable, and replaceable. Elaborate flower plantings, things like that are super high maintenance as well. Next slide. So there are standards for landscaping. This comes from the American Association of Physical Plant Administrators. That's an actual thing. And they go through and calculate what it costs to run physical plant, whether that's parks, whether that's to run a sewer plant, to how much janitorial costs per square foot. So these are actual numbers for the area of the roundabout times the amount of maintenance that you would have to do in the year based on the different levels, a low, high, medium level of landscaping, and what it works out to over time. And really, for something that's concrete, like you see on the left there, that has zero maintenance, it's 25 life is zero. You're going to pay zero in maintenance. The next one over, you might pay somewhere 40 to 50,000 over 25 years to maintain that. And then something where you're out there mowing it pretty consistently, it's got irrigation, it's got lighting, it's got stuff to graffiti, you're, $80,000 a year, or $80,000 over 25 years, sorry, $3,200 a year. So times that by 5, you're $500,000 over 25 years, just in landscaping maintenance if you went with a higher level of landscaping. Next slide. So this is just another picture of, kind of what you could do with art on the underpass. That might be kind of a phasing thing where you could do plain concrete to start and then do a community organization project around doing an art project there. Next slide. So this is like level of service medium, stamped and stained concrete, minimal landscaping. You can see the area of concrete is quite large in the area compared to the area of landscaping in the center. low maintenance, cobbles, minimal signage. Splitters are all paved, so there's no landscaping in the splitter islands. Retaining walls have some level of stained and dyed concrete, but it's not custom form liner work. And next slide. So this would be your high level of maintenance, just in general. So you've got stamped and stained concrete everywhere, vertical separations. You can see the custom form work on the wall there, so you can get pretty creative with that. That's custom form and dyed and textured. So next slide. So then wayfinding signage. So assume at these roundabouts, if they're going to be gateways to the city, that you're going to want to have some wayfinding signage there. You want to point people towards downtown, City Hall, the brewery, whatever it might be. And is that an opportunity to incorporate some thematic elements and have some organization so that they all kind of look similar? And with wayfinding signage, that's helpful. You don't want people having to figure out the sign while they're trying to figure out where they want to go. You want to have that's why all the Caltrans stuff looks the same. Next slide. We showed that one already. Let's go ahead and skip that one. I'm going to skip that one too. I moved them and I forgot to delete them. So this is the Kenmar interchange. Kenmar is actually the farthest along in terms of design, but we don't actually have landscape concepts for it yet. All the conceptual stuff was done for 12th Street. But you can see at least kind of the relative scale of what we're talking about. That center island there is roughly 60 feet. If you start to retract inward for the landscaping and do more paving, you can reduce that down to 40 feet across, 30 feet across, 10 feet across, whatever you want. Next slide. So really what I was hoping to do is at least for the stuff that's colored at the top there, which is the Kenmar intersection, and I call them east and west. You guys have probably heard of them as north and south. I saw them referenced as north and south. It doesn't make any sense to me. One's on the east side of the freeway, one's on the west side of the freeway. And try to kind of fill in this matrix as best we can, or at least provide staff with some pretty solid direction that we can then go to Caltrans and say, yes, this is what we want, have our designers work up stuff and have Caltrans approve it for Kenmar. So Kenmar East coming into town, my assumption, and we can change all of these, I just populated them to have something in there, was that there would be gateway signage in the roundabout, that there would be wayfinding signage, that the level of landscaping would be high, because in the stuff that I saw from previous meetings, these were talked about as gateways to the city. If the idea is to have a gateway aesthetic, then those would be a fairly high level of landscaping. All the pavement would be stamped and stained. There would be some sort of thematic elements, whether that's logging, saw blades, fish, riverine elements, cobbles, etc. And we're still going to stay away from landscaping any of the splitter islands. And I thought of the monument sign as being art, because it really is. It's kind of an art installation. Kenmar West, going the other direction, maybe not. You might choose to have that be equal, but I kind of thought of it as maybe, put your eggs on the going into the city side of the basket. The wayfinding, I think you want to have some consistency there. The level of landscaping there could be, again, anything from flat concrete to landscaping, but not, park level landscaping. All the pavement will be stamped and stained. It's really not much of a cost increase. And again, the city isn't going to be paying for the cost of construction directly on these. These are projects that the city of Fortuna isn't ever going to be able to afford. This is probably going to be the feds paying for this if we get lucky and get the grants that we apply for. Or Caltrans will be doing it, we'll be doing it with state money or federal money. And no art or, custom kind of installations there. On the underpass walls, I kind of put in there just the idea of keeping them bare concrete without a whole bunch of detail, maybe having the opportunity to come back and do a mural or something in the future. Again, the cost of construction, as far as the city's concerned, it isn't the big thing to base your decisions on. It's more about long-term maintenance. So if you really feel strongly that you want detailed concrete or some other elements there, this is a good time to talk about it. And that's that's my presentation.
Covered a lot of ground in there. I know that the roundabouts are mountable, if I'm not, they're designed for that, for the
Yes.
incidence of a truck cheating or maybe just going over. So whatever we put in there, I would think would be low. And I know that your landscaping, you aren't, the high doesn't mean it's tall landscaping, it means there's a high incidence of landscaping in there.
Yes.
But the concrete, I mean, if we use stamped concrete and maybe dyed, it would look, good, and it wouldn't be bland. I mean, obviously, we got other people to weigh in on it, but that's my thing. Since the roundabouts are designed to be driven, not designed to be driven on, and not hoping they are, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, and there is a central island aspect to it, island within an island, I guess. The island itself, the shoulders of the island are definitely made to be mountable, like you said. Anybody that's seen like the Mercer Fraser traffic going through the 12th Street intersection there, coming back and forth from here, they move some big pieces of equipment through there. They're definitely going to drive over that stuff. But there is, all of those turn radiuses were all calculated, and there is a central area still. I don't know the exact dimensions of that, whether that's 30 feet or, 20 or 25 feet, but it is still a pretty good sized area there that could be landscaped that is not intended to be mountable. And you don't necessarily want, if you just pave everything flat, you do run the risk of people just short circuiting stuff and going right across it, taking the shortest path, right?
I've seen tire tracks on the ones on Gentoli, and they tell a tale.
They put some big rocks.
Straight across.
Yeah, they've put some big rocks in a lot of them now to try to prevent that.
But I don't know what the other council.
I think one of the things that comes to my head is making sure that we plan ahead with electrical for lighting and whatnot. I think that's one of our probably big downsides in the center medians of town is if those were lit, we could do so much more to decorate and to make the city. Went on a business trip recently and was in a downtown area where every tree had electrical out to it and it was plugged in, and I think it makes it look really nice. And I think even in the kind of the roundabout, if we leave a spot for like a removable decoration throughout the years that we can either light up or use, where we can have the city sign, but also maybe like a Christmas tree or a bull during rodeo or something like that, or a big apple for apple harvest is something we can change out and kind of decorate. Would kind of just make it where it can permanently attach for the time being, but not be permanently attached.
I like the idea of having a small circle inside of the big circle, and that small circle could have either rock on it with, like Kyle was saying, with some sort of, I like the deer that we have down there by Ray's. Something like that maybe sat in the middle of that, which would be hardly no maintenance at all, or, or something that could be changed. We could have a metal snowman or something like that during Christmas, or a bucking horse for rodeo, different things that we could change out eventually, for different seasons. But I like the idea of having maybe just stamped concrete on the outside with a smaller island on the inside that we could do something more decorative to.
I agree as well, and I think that Kyle mentioned it. I think it's important to have lighting because we want to emphasize whatever we do put up there. But definitely the stamp and stained concrete around it should give it the right color scheme to accentuate whatever we put in the middle.
Is there any risk that PG&E would say no if we change our mind later? Like if we say, oh, we want basic hardscaping, but then we say, oh, actually, we want to landscape it later, or vice versa. Is that?
It's in there right away.
I guess how critical is it that we tell them what we want at this point?
With Kenmar, I think it is critical. I initially asked the questions, I knew this was going to be a discussion we were going to have. This has kind of become a critical path issue for design because they do want to, like if you go to install an art installation in Caltrans right away, they have a whole division of people that approve that sort of thing. So they want to get it to the right people within their organization so they can see it and get the stamp of approval on it. So these are pretty much shovel-ready plans at that point.
What I'd really like to stay away from is having to hire more employees to do the maintenance on all of that. So, something that looks really nice, but with little maintenance.
Is there the idea of, because again, you're going to have two on the east side, with 12th Street and Kenmar, you're going to have two on the east side of the highway and two on the west side of the highway. Any thoughts about treating those similarly or differently as far as?
I personally think that you're kind of on the right track with your chart here. East side's more the going into town, what might be the high kind of landscaping, and then the lower on the other end. Again, with the general kind of the same concept, but I think the gateway side, making that a little more decorative, but not overwhelming for city staff, but something that can, at least have some mowed grass to it and maybe a few, native shrubs.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a few signs that we change for the monument sign at Kenmar and Ross Hill that has a theme that goes with it. For rodeo, we have a bucking bronc. For Auto Expo, we have a hot rod. For the spring, the Daffodil Festival, we have flowers. And there's a variety of different things that we can use. And if that monument sign has to go out, if it can be moved, which I don't know if it can or not, it could go off to the side, just off the park and ride, where it can still be seen from the travel way, and it could still have a welcome to Fortuna aspect to it and all that at the same time.
That particular sign is at a stage in its life where it's fairly high maintenance. The wood is starting to fall apart. The tile work, Bob's guys have done a bunch of work on the tile work. I would avoid tile, mosaic stuff. It likes to fall apart. But if you like the overall look of the sign, and it's a good looking sign, we can have the architects kind of program in something similar. I think the idea of having interchangeable items that you can change easily is pretty clever, and it's pretty low cost. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and you can change it when new things come up. So if the idea of kind of taking what's there at the existing signage, incorporating similar elements in terms of how the general aesthetic of it and the interchangeable elements, we can come up with something.
Yeah, well, that's it. We've got a ready set of items to go on the sign, emblems. Is there any public comment on this item, what the public feels about what it should look like? I'm seeing none, but I'm another one that is plan carefully and look at the maintenance cost for the long run, because we have a variety of items already around town that have a lot of maintenance and not a lot of funding, so.
One thing I will say as somebody, fairly new to Fortuna, is that the volunteers that handle a bunch of the landscaping along Main Street and 12th Street do a phenomenal job. Like, they look great. So, you've got to be careful about how much you try to leverage volunteer efforts like that, but they're doing a bang-up job right now.
That's the garden club that does that, and they do an excellent job. I just wanted to add this, with all the roundabouts having some similarity, like have them, maybe all of them have the stamped concrete with the smaller middle, and then we can do different things in the middle. But having them kind of all be a little bit similar to that instead of just a bunch of random stuff.
I think, as far as my own 2 cents, I would probably, favor the less maintenance, the better. I think we've got so much stuff already and so many things that we'd like to do. I'd like to see, more trails and, Newburgh Park expansion. So much stuff that needs to be done that hasn't yet, that I think it's, even if it's only, it looks like a few $1,000s a year for maintenance, may still be a lot of a burden. So my own personal opinion would be, whatever kind of hardscaping we can get away with, stamped or color that might look good, and then, like to Tammy's point, maybe, you know, some sort of durable sculptures or, you know, low maintenance things that still add some visual appeal that we could potentially add to it later. Or volunteers, you know, maybe some school kids want to paint a mural on the retaining wall, but I don't know that we need like a bunch of like embossed concrete texture and whatever. Just, so.
I was also thinking for our landscaping, you could always go turf, which would give it more of the long-term, less maintenance, but it'd give it that mowed grass look.
One more opportunity for the public. Okay.
And I don't know if such a thing exists, but, you know, if there was, you know, something that required landscaping, you know, if there is a zero maintenance kind of landscaping option, some sort of like plant some native plants, just let it go wild sort of thing. But I don't know, that may be easier said than done.
Unfortunately, in our climate, that means blackberries.
Yep.
Anything you let go is gonna grow blackberries to a great degree. But your point is well taken about the, you know, the lower landscaping areas, and especially to the west of the highway. That was kind of what I was envisioning. Like you can kind of put your eggs more in the one basket on the entry side, and I think that would save you quite a bit of landscaping maintenance over time if you went low landscaping on the other side of the highway. And I realize I put you all on the spot trying to design by committee a little bit, so.
Well, I'm sure we would all like a nice feature, but I think the reality is it's got to be practical.
It is going to be in an area where there's exhaust fumes, wind, a chance of getting run over. So we plan accordingly with that. I think you have started on a good, and you've been taking notes, I've noticed, so.
Yes, so if overall this approach kind of rings with you, then we'll start those discussions with GHD and maybe have some stuff mocked up and see what Caltrans thinks of our ideas as we start talking about maintenance agreements, so.
Well, if you feel like you've got direction, we can take that and take a motion and you can take off with it.
Okay.
Make a motion to use the directive received roughly from your chart to create a vision plan for.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. Well, we come to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. I have been immersed in SB 1383 compliance. CalRecycle, we attended a conference call in which CalRecycle went through the significant amount of reporting that the city of Fortuna will need to do. And so I was in a 2-hour meeting this afternoon with our consultant, making sure that our franchise agreement places some of that reporting on to Recology. But there will still be a tremendous amount of work that will fall to city staff due to this state mandate, and more will be coming. I did attend an SB 707 open meeting laws webinar. Lots of changes for larger jurisdictions, but we are exempt, except I will need to provide you all with a recent copy of the Brown Act, which is now a state mandate that you have a copy of the Brown Act. We're working on a 5-year financial forecast for transit. I think some of you are aware that transit is coming to also a pivot point in terms of funding, and so we're working on a 5-year financial forecast, and that will come to your city council at a later date. I attended an HCOG meeting, and we were discussing the regional housing needs allocation and HCD's need for the RENA allocation to include opportunity score in the methodology. And so that will come to the HCOG board, and there's a modified allocation that will come to your board for approval. And then on a lighter note, I was a judge for the Al Gray Lighted Parade last Friday. There was lots of lights and holiday cheer, so I wish you all a happy holidays, and to the staff as well, and the community. That's it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for, okay, well, we'll come to the council reports and Councilmember Conley. Oh, I always forget the future agenda items. Is there any future agenda items? None. Okay.
No report, really. We still can't get a quorum together for Parks and Rec, so we're hoping next Monday is the day that we get that done. So hopefully I'll have a report next time. Happy holidays if you celebrate. Other than that.
Okay. Councilmember Diaz.
I have a meeting for RCA coming up on Wednesday, so I'll be attending that. And I just wanted to thank all the city staff and management for all the dedication, loyalty, and maintaining the city for what it is. I really appreciate it as we come to another year end. I know that the budget situation is very critical right now, but personally, I wanted to thank you for all the time that you've put in and the hard work that you are putting in for the city.
And Councilmember Stevens.
No reports at this time.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Trent.
Well, Carlos just said everything that I wanted to say. Sorry. So I'm just going to say ditto.
Okay, well, I had the opportunity to help Santa and Mrs. Claus out. Pam and I did, and at the Stocking Stuffer Boutique at the GLC, and that was a good time. Got to see a lot of the things that the community members had crafted, and then got to help the kids and all. We participated and helped support the garden club with the home tour, and got to see a lot of highly decorated themed houses that they did a great job on. I don't think there was a bad one in the bunch. And got to tour the Mudgett House over on 9th and O, which has always been on my radar and haven't had the opportunity. And it's a unique piece of real estate right in there, and they've done a lot of work, and I don't think I'll live to see the end of the work on that. There's a lot of grounds and a lot in the house, and they have a big plan, and I look forward to seeing it evolve. Then got to watch the lighted parade. It went right down the end of my street, and got to walk down there and see it, and it was a lot, it seemed like it was a lot larger than it has been lately. I don't know, but it sure seemed like it to me. A lot more participation and a lot of community members out there having a good time. I do have an HCOG meeting this coming Thursday that has a arena, part of it is on there, and some of the overall work program. We're going to get a presentation on the new hydrogen bus, since we're talking transit, not our hydrogen bus, but HTA's, and look forward to seeing all those things. We're also going to get an update on a road charge. As you know, as vehicles, more people go to alternative fuels or higher mileage vehicles, there's less gas being purchased. And so our money that we get to maintain our roads and sidewalks and traffic signals and street lights is dropping. And there has been a committee that I think it's been going on for about 6 years now, and hopefully they're coming close to getting to a decision on how they're going to come up with a new way. Instead of taxing gasoline gallons, they will tax some other way for these hybrid vehicles, electronic vehicles, and higher mileage vehicles that we're not capturing the true cost of what it takes to maintain the roads. And we do have, like I said, the RENA numbers, an HCD letter, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we come through this. So that's all I have to report right now. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.